All right, with us right now, we've got Brandon Forschino. And Brandon, you're the founder and CEO of Out of Dust Marketing Communications. You're on the web at outofdustmarketing.com. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, I'm really excited to chat about this because once in a while we'll get clients that are creatives, particularly musicians. And so musicians, creative artists, they want to get their stuff heard. And,
Sure,
obviously they're leveraging every aspect of social they can. Maybe they're using, what are some of the, if you're a music artist, what are some of the tools that you're using to try and attract attention before we get to the big one that begins with an S?
That's right. Well, you've got everything from Apple Music, Amazon Play, you got, that whole strategy. You've got YouTube, you've got your own Instagram and Facebook, your website. And again, big transition going from the actual CDs, the MP3s to now these digital streaming platforms, SoundCloud, right? Sure. And obviously, like you said, the big one right now, Spotify and even Pandora.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk specifically, because you and I talked before this call about something that I think is actually quite brilliant. Maybe this is common knowledge for everybody who's an artist. But so one thing that's very, very common in Spotify, how many, like 14 million? It's got to be, it's definitely so many users.
Platforms. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So, I threw out that 14, 232 million active users, and 108 million paying subscribers. That's how many are in Spotify. So one thing that's really wonderful about Spotify and why I love it over, say, Apple Music and Amazon and some of the other playings is discovery. This discovery is so good. Absolutely. And one tool that Spotify makes really good use of are playlists.
That's right.
That, my friend, is that's your segue. That's right. Now, I want you to talk about, like, if you're an artist and you want your stuff, I'm going to kind of connect the dots a little bit here, and you want your stuff heard, what's really great about Spotify is there are Spotify influencers.
That's correct. It's all about playlist marketing and promotion, right? It's identifying who has your audience for your genre of music so that when someone is looking for a genre or mood that day, they're going to stumble upon you and your voice, right? And it's not going to be something they're listening to that's, why did this just pop up on this playlist? Like this sucks, right? So the key here is, number one, it's finding out who these influencers are, right? And then making sure that your music is going to connect with their audience. The moment you find that and you crack the code, you're now, driving your streams, you're driving your listeners, and you're creating engaged fans that have never heard about you before.
And so I think the idea is, there's a couple of things I want to talk about. Number one is, how does someone become a Spotify influencer? And then number two, we'll talk about, how might someone engage with a Spotify influencer? We'll start with the first one. I just searched one guy. So I'm looking at Christopher Banks right now, and he's got an EDM hits playlist, and it's got over 117,000 followers. How did he do that?
I think it might be a combination of just being first to the party and then being consistent at the party. I think the name of the game here, as you know, is content, right? Content is always king. And, number one, this is a pretty new, it's not completely new, but it's definitely becoming something that's more on the rise, especially with the competition, right? So a lot of these people who were in this early and saw the functionality and the features, these early adopters, they've got a huge advantage, and there's a big runway for that. I'm seeing a lot of these playlist influencers actually promoting and advertising their playlists. I'm seeing people create websites. Yeah. I'm seeing people do their own SEO for their playlists. I'm seeing them, advertise on Spotify, and they're building a business. And, a lot of these guys, as they grow their clout and their influence, they have monetized the opportunity to maybe review music and say, hey, you want your song on my playlist? Well, it's going to cost you some money. So it's a smart,
I'm looking at this
strategy.
Playlist. I'm looking at this playlist description right now. EDM hits 2019, the best EDM hits of 2019. It's, I'm looking at all the songs here. They were all updated like 5 days ago. So that certainly adds the freshness that users love. He has a bunch of artists he names as examples. All your favorite EDM festival hits, updated weekly. And then it says, and here we go, submissions. and he's got a link to his Instagram and his Facebook.
That's right. Yep. That's correct.
And so talk about what is likely going to happen if I reach out to this playlist curator who's got 117,000 followers and I say, hey, I'd love for you to play my music. What do you think's going to happen?
Well, what's going to happen is they're going to test the seriousness of your patience and your commitment to really being heard. So they get these submissions all day, every day. And so they've created their own systems and processes to weed out, let's just say the weak, and weed out the ones that aren't so serious, especially, the ones that are robotic and just using artificial intelligence to just manufacture that whole thing. So typically these submission processes are pretty lengthy. They're not easy. There's a pretty lengthy, submission process that includes, filling out a form, submitting music, and then obviously there's some that will put a monetary value on that. This is a way that they're weeding out the people who are serious. And, for a large part of it, if you're fortunate enough as an artist that your music's already in a top chart, a top streaming chart, say top 20, you're going to have a good foot in the door. Another thing that they're looking for, in my experience, is they want to see the quality of the production, meaning, who produced the track? Is there some really big name producers that are associated with the single? Is there a record label attached to it? So they are looking for some modifiers, some key kind of, figures there to see, all right, how serious is this? Because we don't want just some average Joe Schmo who just decided in his bedroom one day he's going to throw up a nice, dance track or something like that. So, it can be a lengthy process. It's not typically as easy as, just hit me up don't slide in my DM on Instagram or just hit me up on Facebook. There's a process, right? And it certainly, I would say it certainly nixes away 75% of the people who are, doing this submission process.
Yeah. And so, it's probably some back and forth. He probably has a page that's all set up that explains the process. Some editorial process for sure. And then I wonder what the going rates are. For let's say he's got 100,000 followers. I mean, we can only guess. But what have you gotten any proposals back as you've been working? Because so you work with creative artists.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and there's some proposals that come through, and there's some figures that they shoot back, and it's not typically something that's out of this world. I mean, I think the most that I've ever seen for a playlist that maybe 100,000 followers can be anywhere from $15 to $99 for example. But that's not just one playlist. That's typically going to include a selection of maybe 2 to 4. It's going to have a certain time frame of when that song's going to be up. There are, you're not guaranteed to stay on these playlists, right?
Yeah.
However, the one thing that's super important though is like anything, if you are added somewhere, the more people respond positively to that track, the more people are on that, and he's tracking those analytics to see which songs are performing the best. Your chances are going to, chances of staying on these playlists are better, even outside of the paid partnership, if you will. And a lot of times, you don't need to lower yourself to a paid promotion. I think, again, if you're targeting the right playlist owners and you're genuinely, if you think about it, these playlist owners are fans of music. They wouldn't have just started an EDM playlist because they're like, oh, that's a great business model. They're not getting rich off that. They're genuinely passionate about the music. So when you present something that's, that's going to relate to them, they're going to be in favor of doing that. And you're going to have a little bit better of a chance of getting that success, right? I've had playlist owners literally respond like, wow, that was a good hit. I'm adding it to my own personal playlist in addition to this playlist here. Thank you so much for bringing me, up to speed on this creative. And this is a really good vibe. And, the discovery goes exponentially from there because again, you're going to see, they were discovered on, playlist A, but then they obviously added it to their own, liked song playlist on Spotify. And then, you're starting to cultivate, brand new fans, which is really cool. So there's a lot of aspects that go into that.
This is kind of like, the old days of disco, where, you'd have artists that would go from DJ to DJ. You're like, hey, you got to spin my new track, it's like if you saw the series, The Get Down.
Yeah, these record pools back in like, New York and Boston and, having those record pools where you're literally in your neighborhood, you're just trying to get on these DJs' radar locally.
Yeah.
And essentially, and not to mention, I'll tell you, in the music industry, especially in the United States, it's extremely hard to really make it in music. I mean, especially in pop music, for example. And, to go to radio with a song, it costs a lot of money. I mean, the cheapest I've ever seen in my experience is, a radio distributor or promoter who is charging maybe $3,000 a month just to take your single and go to his Rolodex of radio stations and producers and directors and saying, hey, here's a single, here's a single, here's a single. And it may or may not even get added to their radio station, right?
Wow.
So you're spending thousands and thousands of dollars to try to get a single to radio, even the ones that are signed to major labels. And you're not guaranteed anything. All you're guaranteed is a potential audience that would hear it, right? With Spotify or YouTube or Pandora, whatever these streaming platforms are, there's analytics associated to it that tells you exactly how many impressions, exactly how many net streams, how many listeners. So you can give them real data to say, no, this is exactly how many people heard your song. This is exactly what their gender was. This is where they were located. This is, this is the other artists they listen to, right? So we get a chance to get that data to use it for our next campaign. So now if we're doing advertising to promote music to followers, we know what the age is, we know their gender, we know where their locations are, we know their interests, we know their behaviors. So it goes beyond just getting on good playlists, but how do you leverage the results, not just the streams, and what data that you receive from these platforms? How do you take that to the next level?
Okay, so let's say that there's an artist and they're like, okay, well, I guess I could just manually do this myself as best as I can. You guys have developed some software and some totally. Tools to kind of speed up the process a little bit. What does engagement look like if an artist wanted to approach you and like, hey, can you help me get some more visibility? I just want people listening to my music. It's my dream to kind of, have just get something to get some traction.
Absolutely. Well, we've developed a system that's based on the time it takes to submit a certain amount of streams. So we have about 5 packages that go from, the beginner to what we would call mainstream or epic. Pandora AMP has a category that they categorize audience based on, up and coming or established, mainstream, epic. They have these categories they give artists based on their traction. So we kind of follow the same rubric. And we have these little categories. So, the lowest level package may only be Spotify, and it may only be 5 song submissions a month for 6 months, right? Or the highest level might include Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora, YouTube, and it includes like 25 a month. So really, we have different packages based on us manually building the relationships and doing the time, taking the time to actually find out which would be the best networks to get added to. So that's a retainer-based situation that we have right now, and it's pretty minimal. That's where we start at this point. Awesome. And the proprietary software really helps us streamline this. So we have created a proprietary software, which is helping us. It's merely helping us research quickly the people we want based on the identity of the artist or the creative. So everything that we do is completely built around their brand and their audience in general. So we're not just, hey, we have thousands of relationships with people that may not be relevant for this guy who's doing this particular genre.
Yeah. So well, Brandon Forschino, you are the founder of Out of Dust Marketing, and you can be found on the web at outofdustmarketing.com. Contact Brandon if you're a creative, and I would imagine, Brandon, you probably have you do consultations and kind of figure out, you make some recommendations on best course of action. So, Brandon, I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, it was great talking with you, man. Thanks for having me on your podcast.